So today, we're going to crack open the book on one of humanity's oldest, and let's be honest, most feared diseases. But this isn't just a story about medicine. Oh no. This is the biography of cancer itself.
For centuries, this thing was just a shapeless dread, a dark emperor ruling from inside the body. But to fight a monster, you've got to name it first. You have to understand it. You have to tell its story.
And look, this whole story, it doesn't start in some sterile lab. It starts with a real person. Let's talk about Carla. Her story is the story of millions, that sudden, terrifying confrontation with this ancient disease. It's that feeling that your own body has somehow turned against you. To really get what Carla's up against, we have to understand the war that's been raging for millennia. We've got to go way back, to a time when this ancient monster was a complete and utter mystery. I mean, just look at this timeline. For almost 2,000 years, our understanding pretty much went nowhere. The best guess, all the way back in 160 AD, came from the Roman physician Galen. He thought cancer was just an excess of some mystical fluid he called black bile. It wasn't until 1902 that Rudolf Virchow finally gave us the real answer. Cancer isn't an invader, it's us. It's a disease of our own cells, gone rogue, driven to just divide forever.
Okay, so once doctors figured out that cancer was basically a clump of our own cells gone haywire, the first battle plan was, well, it was simple and it was brutal. Cut it out or burn it away. This was the era of pure brute force.
And when I say brutal, I mean brutal. Try to picture a world with no sterilization. Surgeons would literally carry their scalpels around in their pockets. And yeah, you read that right. Pus pails were standard operating equipment. The fight against cancer, it started from a place of desperation, not sophistication. So you had these two main weapons, right? Radical surgery and radiation. But they both had a massive fatal flaw. They were only local treatments. The second that cancer spread or metastasized to other parts of the body, they were totally useless. And the cost, it was immense. The very radiation being used to treat cancer was often causing it in the long run. Now, this next part is wild. Our next big weapon, it literally came from the horrors of war. In 1943, an Allied ship secretly carrying mustard gas gets bombed. And when they did autopsies on the victims, they found something bizarre. Their bone marrow, which is packed with rapidly dividing cells, was just gone, wiped out. A light bulb went off. If this poison kills fast-growing blood cells, could it kill fast-growing cancer cells? And just like that, a weapon of war became chemotherapy. So with these new, really imperfect weapons in hand, the fight suddenly spills out of the operating room and into the public square. Cancer was no longer just a medical problem, it was becoming a social cause.
And this is where a guy named Sidney Farber enters the story. Back in the 1940s, he took on what was considered the most hopeless diagnosis of all, childhood leukemia. Most doctors wouldn't even touch it, but Farber, he just refused to believe it had to be a death sentence.
Farber knew he couldn't do it alone. He needed money and he needed the public on his side. So he gets this radio show involved to surprise a young patient. They called him Jimmy, with a visit from his baseball heroes. The whole broadcast ended with this incredibly powerful plea. And the response, it was absolutely mind-blowing. They were hoping to get what, 20 grand? Look at that number. They raised over $230,000. The Jimmy Fund was born, and with it, a national movement. For the first time, people felt a sense of public hope, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, this disease could be fought. But here's the thing. Hope and brute force can only get you so far. The real revolution, the absolute game changer, came when scientists stopped just looking at the cancer cell and started looking inside it, at its very DNA. And what they found in there was something called an oncogene. Now, the best way to think about this is like the gas pedal in your car. We all have normal genes that tell our cells when to grow and when to stop. An oncogene is a mutated version of that gene. It's like the accelerator is stuck to the floor. The cell just goes and goes and goes with no brakes. And this image right here, it's a perfect picture of that idea. This is basically a 3D map of the genetic mistakes in a tumor. Each one of those mountains you see represents a common mutation, one of the specific errors in the code that's driving that cancer's growth. For the first time, we could actually see the enemy's blueprint. This new understanding completely changed the game. Think about it. If the old chemo was a sledgehammer, just indiscriminately smashing any fast-growing cell in the body, this new approach was like a microscopic scalpel. It was designed to go in and cut out only the one broken part, the oncogene that was causing all the trouble. And the poster child for this whole new way of thinking? It was a drug called Gleevec. This thing was a legitimate magic bullet, engineered to do one thing and one thing only. Find the specific oncogene driving a deadly type of leukemia and just turn it off. And it worked. It proved this targeted approach wasn't just a cool theory, it was the future. And that brings us pretty much to today. The results of all this history, all this discovery, all this suffering is a brand new reality for patients. It's not a simple victory, but what some people call a long defeat of the emperor.
So remember Carla from the very beginning? Well, 5 years after that terrifying diagnosis, a biopsy confirms her remission is holding strong. For her type of leukemia, hitting that 5-year mark is pretty much the same as being cured. She is a direct beneficiary of every single step of the history we've just talked about.
And she's not the only one. You have patients like Ben Orman, cured of his lymphoma, who now gets to live what he calls an afterlife, a life beyond cancer, a future that was completely unimaginable just a few generations ago.
But you know, surviving something like this is a really complex journey. I love this quote from an early survivor who said the randomness of getting the illness is matched only by the randomness of being cured. It just mystifies you. So yeah, this isn't one of those stories where the good guys just win and the credits roll. It's so much more complicated than that. It's a story of a hard-won reprieve, of pushing back an emperor inch by painful inch through centuries of accumulated knowledge.
All right, so let's wrap this up. What are the big things to remember? 1. Cancer is a disease of our own mutated genes. 2. Our treatments have evolved from a sledgehammer to a scalpel. 3. Public support and advocacy have been absolutely crucial. And finally, number 4, survival is now a real possibility for so many, but this war is far, far from over.
The emperor of all maladies. He's not dead, he hasn't been deposed, not by a long shot. But after millennia of absolute, terrifying rule, for the very first time in human history, his throne is finally starting to shake.